Good morning, everybody. I'm Fabio Tomasi from Addison's Park, and I'm glad to welcome you to this last webinar of the Urban Transport Community Series. Okay. I know that most of you have already attended a webinar of the series, so probably you already know about us and our community, but I would pledge your indulgence and let me make a brief presentation of the community and the services that we are offering for those of you that first attended and perhaps are not very much familiar with what we are doing. So the urban transport community is a community involving several projects that have been funded by the Interact Med program in the realm of sustainable urban mobility. There are more than 200 organizations that have been implementing projects in the MED program area that include more than 400 people that have experience in the field of sustainable mobility. This community is managed by a partnership that is led by Med Cities, which is the coordinator. Then we have UNIMED, that is an association of Mediterranean University, CiviNet Greece and Cyprus, that is promoting sustainable mobility in Greece and Cyprus. Addison's Park, the house that we are in Science Technology Park. CODATU, an international association of local authorities involved in sustainability. Polis, another network, a European-wide network of cities, and the municipalities of Durres. So in this frame, we have developed and made available a catalog of solutions from the previous project. The rationale behind it is, for sure, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, also because in the meantime, we have also invented automated vehicle. That means that when you as a city want to implement a measure, probably there's someone that has already tried it, implemented, and has some experience you could learn on in order not to invent the wheel, but take the benefits from the experience gained from the others. So for this, we collected the experience of the previous MED projects into a database. You have the link on the screen. Which is medurbantools.com/UTC, where you can find a sheet that describes the solutions that have been implemented and also some lessons learned that would you help it. But probably that's not enough to promote the capitalization and the taking up of the work done by previous or ongoing projects related to urban mobility. That's why we have devised a further program identifying pioneer cities, in other words, those that have already implemented some actions and replicating cities. And we launch a call because when you wish to replicate a solution, when we are speaking to sustainable mobility, it's not just a copy and paste that you can just replicate directly what has been done. In that case, you could just access the database and then handle the story. The fact is that you could need to understand clearly which were the factors that contributed to the success of the implementation, which were the difficulties that they faced, and which could be the killer factors. And probably, since cities are not exactly one to the same, but each one has its own peculiar problem, its own characteristics. Moving from country to another country, there could be some legislative and regulatory differences, and all these need to be taken into consideration. So when replicating is not copy and paste, if you are familiar with Microsoft Word or Excel, it's a copy and paste spatial because you need some action to adapt it. So the idea is to launch these mentoring services that will be offered by the urban transport community, where cities willing to replicate can apply, and if selected, they can benefit from several services, peer-to-peer meeting, and if the pandemic will let us do it, study visits, and getting the support of some experts in mobility, the mentors, in adapting the solution to the specific need of your city or region. So, to apply, you have to click on the link. Here, there's a contact desk, an help desk, which will help you drafting the call. You can also follow us on several social media accounts. We have a newsletter and a different account that will let you updated with all the work that we've done. And beside the mentoring program that we are going to implement, we are going to organize further events and policy making and definition. So I think it could be interesting for you to follow us in the years to come. So getting to the topic of today's webinar, which, as I said, is the last one of a series of 8 where we presented the solutions that have been developed by previous projects, internet projects. Today is a bit different. We are a bit more open to also other topics. And what we are focusing is on electric mobility. And I would like you to participate actively in the webinar by asking questions to the audience. Please use the chat, and when speakers are speaking, I kindly ask you to turn off your microphone and camera to avoid noise in the backgrounds or to have a connection problem. So to start, I kindly ask you, even if I see that many of you have already started, to answer to the first question on Mentimeters. You could click on the link or use the QR code or connect to www.menti.com and insert the code 6511523. And please answer this simple question, just to warm up and get familiar with the tool. Just a few questions from everybody to answer. Okay, so during the webinar, we will ask you further questions. And again, if you want to ask questions to the speakers or share your comments, please use the question and answer session. We could, and we are going to have after the presentation a roundtable and a question and answer session. So at that point, we will answer most of the questions that you do. Okay, I see that some of you is already familiar with electric vehicles, being a bike or a scooter or a car, and there's one that has already driving also a spaceship. I would like to get in touch with that person outside the meeting to arrange a webinar on sustainable mobility in the outer space. But today's topic is a bit more trivial, as we are dealing with electric mobility and the impact that this could have on urban planning. I mean, if batteries, of all doesn't matter for just engineers and car producers, but if the charging infrastructure make a development, that will impact significantly on the planning of your cities, where to locate the charging infrastructure and whatever you need. So that's important. So I would like to move on. Sorry, I forgot to share the results of the Mentimeter. Okay. And I would move to the following question. Sorry, it's not working. Yeah. So the next question is the number of sales of electric vehicles is increasing. This is something that is a feature of this year, also due to some benefits that has been offered. And the question is your city ready for the increase in the number of electric vehicles in terms of charging infrastructure, and is the grid ready for that? Please make a ranking of that. And while you are answering, I will introduce to the first of the presentation of today, which is an illustration of a studies that has been carried in the frame of the urban transport project to analyze the technology trends in urban mobility. Today, we are going to focus on charging infrastructure, and the presentation will be done by two colleagues of mine, Ms. Barbara Monaco and Markus Lavic. Both of them are researchers in Addison Park, have an outstanding experience in the field of sustainable mobility, electric mobility, energy efficiency. They have been working together on several projects on this topic. So, Barbara, you are the first to speak. So, as we can see from the answer, our cities perhaps are not totally ready for a steady increase on electric vehicles, especially perhaps, well, the answers are more or less the same with the last questions. We see that some of them has perhaps a good number of charging infrastructure, whereas others are still lagging behind. And also the distribution of this charging infrastructure could be not optimal. And there are some concern of grid capacity. Yeah, that looks interesting. Barbara, so would you like to share what you have discovered during your research?
Yes, good morning, everybody. And today I'm going to share together with my colleague, Markus Lavic, our work with the the startup technology trends and perspective in e-mobility planning over the next 5 to 10 years. So we started from the consideration that generally autonomous, electric, digital are technology trends that represents the epitome of the transformative wave revolving not only to urban mobility but to all of our society. Recent developments from car makers, massive investment in electric vehicles, to the advances of artificial intelligence and automation confirm that this mobility paradigm is at a crossroad. ICT represents the transversal thread allowing interaction between human and machine, adding more comfort and safety to our ways to move. With a view to mass market, but also to public authorities, we must include automotive engineering as well as charging infrastructure matters in order to reach a user-oriented and integrated overall system. But we must include also energy and environmental issues and also urban planning aspects all together. Within urban transport project, my colleague and I in Aeroscience Park are investigating on two big thematic areas of high interest for urban transports. From the one side, the electric mobility charging infrastructure, and on the other side, the future of automated and connected vehicles. In particular, we are investigating how these ecosystems will impact on urban spaces and in urban layouts. The aim of our ongoing study is to deepen knowledge on nowadays hot topics and give a short-term vision from 5 to 10 years about of how these trends are going to develop and impact the mobility layout in our city. Forecasting based on technical breakthroughs resulting in competitive products, but also in mass production, shows some results in market shares up to 70% in 2030. Many different predictions have been found in technical literature. However, has also grown an average of over 60% over the same time period. Everybody knows that more available public charging points will increase drivers' confidence to move with electric vehicles, and additional electric vehicle drivers will put more challenges and demands on governments, car makers, and property owners to install more charging infrastructure and stations. The positioning of European countries at the end of 2019 in terms of the number of public recharging points per 100,000 inhabitants and the number of electric vehicles in circulation is rather heterogeneous. For example, Spain and Italy show the most limited diffusion of electromobility in relation to inhabitants, with about 15 charging points for every 100,000 inhabitants and 10 electric cars for every 100,000 inhabitants. Instead, Norway is off the chart in this picture. In fact, it shows a high diffusion of electromobility with over 250 charging points for every 100,000 inhabitants, and more than 6,000 electric cars. As I said before, we must include all these aspects in the planning process and the planning process for the electrification of our cities. We know that the 8 key principles which underpin the sustainable urban mobility planning approach must include the aspects related to the electrification of the transports. E-mobility is a cross-cutting topic covering a wide range of urban road modes and has the potential to support the shift to the new sustainable modes. When planning for the electrification of transport, the mobility planning authorities must clearly identify in its long-term vision the main objectives that are intended to be reached through corresponding measures. For example, one of the main reasons for implementing e-mobility solution is often the improvement of air quality or, for example, noise reduction or the decrease in greenhouse gas emission and so on. As everybody knows, the e-mobility ecosystem stays between the mobility system and the energy ecosystem. This means that electromobility must put together many stakeholders and many issues that must be taken into account in the planning process. Designing infrastructure plans to enable future vehicle targets means, for example, that charging needs come from electric vehicle goals. A growth from 1% of electric vehicle stock today to 25% by 2025 requires approximately 25 times more charging energy, which needs to come from some to be determined mix of home, workplace, public charging infrastructures, and so we must take into account all these aspects into the planning process. Before leaving the floor to my colleague, I'd like to leave you a suggestion on how we decided to divide and classify some of the technologies technology challenges for the electric recharging of electric vehicles that will impact the organization of urban spaces in the near future. In this picture, you can see the opportunity timeline for the electric car cluster, and the same has also been done for e-buses and also for light electric vehicles. We classified some current applications, so the so-called technologies at the state of the art, but also some promising future technology trends. And now my colleague will now illustrate this analysis process in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, everybody. Before talking about the charging technology trends, let's start having a look at, Let's start having a look at the urban electric vehicles classification. We divided them into two main groups. On one hand, the collective mobility vehicles like electric buses, and in the future, e-shuttles and e-pods, and which could become autonomous in the future. On the other hand, we have individual mobility vehicles, so smaller vehicles with smaller batteries and capacity. And we can find electric cars and electric vans, both battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Another group is the one of light electric vehicles, which are smaller and lighter. And we can find quadricycles, tricycles, and these scooters. And the last subgroup is micromobility, the micromobility group, and is the one that has brought the biggest disruptions on our roads in the last years, because there are many new vehicles appearing. And so we have electric bikes, electric kick scooters, segways, hoverboards, electric unicycles, e-skateboarders, and as I said, many others yet to come. Moving to the technology trends, in our study, we identified three main technology trends. The conductive charging, which is the state of the art, is the most widely spread technology, and we have many solutions on the market. It consists in connecting the vehicle to the charging infrastructure through a cable. Then we have the inductive charging, which is not so spread. There are some solutions on the market, mainly for buses and cars. And there's a lot of research and development in progress. So this is a future technology trend which will develop further in the next years. And then battery swapping, which is rather spread in China, not so spread in Western countries. And so there are some solutions on the market, especially in China, as I said, and there are some pilots. Crossing the classification of urban electric vehicles with the technology trends, in our study, we developed some technology fact sheets. So each fact sheet deals with one technology. And so you can see the structure of these pages. For each technology, we indicate the maturity level. We provide a short description, a picture, some technical features, and then we perform a SWOT analysis in which we outline the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then some other sections relate to the impacts on the urban environment and the urban scape, some best practice or case studies if present, and then we end with some tips and in some cases with some warnings. Let's start having a look at the technology trends in more detail. So for conductive charging, we can have for electric buses both stationary and dynamic systems. Electric buses can be charged at depot, so off duty overnight for a long time, and so the power needed could be lower. On the contrary, opportunity charging is made on duty at bus stops or terminals. So for a short time, and the problem is that it requires high power. Dynamic charging is performed en route while the vehicle is traveling. For electric cars, we have charging infrastructures both in private and public spaces, and we have three different modes: slow charging and fast charging, which consist in providing alternative current to the vehicle, and then the transformation from alternative current to direct current is made on board. So there's a transformer on board of the car, and these are slower charging modes. On the other hand, rapid charging consists in providing direct current to the vehicle, so the charging process is faster. The possible future development is could be automatic charging with robots. As far as light electric vehicles are concerned, in the private domain at home, charging consists in connecting the device to a charger, like the one we use for our electronic devices like laptops. In the public space, we can have dedicated parking space for private vehicles and stations for sharing services. And in these places, we can integrate the parking and the charging services. In this slide, you can see some examples. You can see an opportunity charging system for an electric bus. So you can see how it works. Then you can see the charging infrastructure for an electric car, and an example of a possible charging and parking station for light electric vehicles, in this case, e-kick scooters. Let's move to the second trend, which is inductive charging. This is still a future trend. It's based on the electromagnetic induction principle, and the most used principles are resonant inductive coupling and capacitive coupling. It can be made both stationary and dynamic. For electric buses at the bus stop or terminals, as far as stationary charging is concerned, or for dynamic, thanks to a charging rail. The problems are high cost and the lack of flexibility, because you cannot change easily the bus lines. For electric cars, the strengths are the integration. The system is invisible because there's a magnetic hole sunken under the road surface, and so it's space saving, but it's still high cost. It's a high cost system. For light electric vehicles, there are some possible future implementations with parking and charging stations. The biggest issue is the electromagnetic fields pollution, which is still largely unknown, and the possible risks for human health. For example, there could be some problems with people with medical devices like pacemakers. In this picture, I wanted to give you a hint of what the future could be. So dynamic inductive charging could involve the electrification of roads. In the picture, you can see electric toy cars. This is not actually dynamic inductive charging, is conductive charging, because the toy car is in contact with the electrified rail, but the principle is similar. So providing the energy needed while the vehicle is traveling, and is very promising for especially for public transportation like buses, or for long-range travels. The last trend is battery swapping. It's the fastest way to have a fully charged battery on board. It's very suitable for public transport because it allows fast operation with minimum idle time. It's possible on duty with short stops at depot. So the strengths are the slow charging process, and this allows a longer battery life because the power is lower. The speed, the fact that a battery swapping station could be used as an energy storage for the electric grid as well. The weaknesses are the battery size and weight, especially for buses. For cars, the strength is the fact that battery swapping stations could be similar to an automatic car wash. So the space that this technology occupies. The problems are battery standardization and the business model, the battery ownership, and the control over battery's quality and state of charge. It's very convenient for light electric vehicles, especially for sharing services, and it's common because it allows a very efficient charging operation, which can be done on site thanks to the dimension and the weight of battery packs of this kind of vehicles. In this slide, you can see some examples, both taken from China, of a swapping station for an electric car and for buses, electric buses. The technology is rather mature because, as you can see on the bottom, Better Place was a United States startup which was founded in 2007. It went bankrupt on 2013. And the question is that maybe at that time it was too early. There were too little, the number of electric cars was too little. But nowadays in China, there's already a network of battery swapping stations on some highways, as you can see in the map. And you can see a real picture of a Chinese battery swapping station. Battery swapping, as I said previously, is very promising for light electric vehicles. And here you can see a battery swapping station in the urban environment. So small batteries, and which are replaceable by hand. The battery ownerships, some people suggest that we could move to bus, so battery as a service as well, like mobility as a service, and stations could provide maybe small energy storage for urban environments. So what's next? Let's have a look to future charging systems. They will depend on new automotive and battery technologies, which are still in the research and development phase at present. One promising technology, I think, is green liquid battery based on the Nexus technology, which stands for New Semi-Solid Flow Lithium Oxygen Battery. This kind of batteries have a liquid cathode, and the charging operation can be done by substituting the liquid, and the time, as researchers and developers says, is similar to the time needed to refill a vehicle tank with gasoline. So in the future, no doubt we will have new kind of charging infrastructures, but we will have an upgrade, an evolution of existing infrastructures as well. Here you can see that since electromobility stays in the overlapping of two words of the between the mobility ecosystem and the energy ecosystem, the existing parking infrastructure in the future could become an energy storage as well, and in the future with autonomous driven vehicles as well. And this will be possible thanks to vehicle to grid technology and in the future vehicle to X technology and battery swapping. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I give the floor to Fabio again.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Marco, for your presentation. It was quite interesting, and I appreciate the fact that you reminded that electric vehicles are not just cars, but also buses and smaller vehicles. We have a first question from the audience to you, which is high power and faster charging systems seems to be key to scaling up the use of e-mobility, both in public and private mobility. How much time, years, do you think it will take for this technology to be affordable, both for people and public authorities at a general scale?
So I think that it will depend also from a kind of strategic point of view and some strategic choices that will be, because rapid and fast charging will be competitive with the vehicle-to-grid technologies. And so I think that the diffusion and the diffusion of fast charging, it will depend also to the diffusion of the vehicle-to-grid. Together with some challenges related to the capacity of the grid and also the technologies, especially related to the vehicles. So future vehicles must be ready to be charged in a rapid way. In this moment, not all the vehicles are suitable for a rapid charging. Marco?
Well, you have to think in total cost of ownership perspective, by the way. It's not possible to compare to internal combustion engines because the petrol station still costs a lot, but you don't own the petrol station. That's the switch. So yes, the fast charging stations and the wall boxes are not so expensive. The rapid charging is very, very expensive. But rapid charging is useful for long range travels, so mainly on highways. So electric vehicles owners usually charge at home at low overnight and at low power, and maybe vehicle to grid will work with slow charging rather than quick rapid charging. And yeah, you don't need to charge your vehicle often. It depends on habits, but the majority of people charge very not so often. So if you charge every time you have the opportunity to charge your vehicle, you don't need fast, or well, maybe fast could be useful, but you need rapid charging very seldom. And remember that rapid charging is not good for your battery. So maybe it's better not to do it so often.
Okay, thank you. A further question, maybe bit of out of scope, but do you think hydrogen-powered vehicles will be a competitor to electromobility technology? Well, this is an interesting question, but perhaps I would take it for the question and answer session and open it also to the other speakers, since I would like also to have a wider discussion. But this is a very good point that we will discuss later. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. In the meantime, you can answer to the new question on Mentimeter. And I introduce you to the next speaker, which is Ms. Cristina Daniel. She graduated in forestry engineering, and she has been responsible for the creation and development of the Energy Environment Agency of Arabida in Portugal. Currently, she is the executive and managing director of the agency, and she holds more than 20 years experience in design, development, and coordination of sustainability activities and projects, both national and international, in the scope of natural resources, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. So, Cristina.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this very interesting webinar. So can I start sharing my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, good morning. I will start my presentation by just very shortly telling you about ENA. We are an energy and environment agency. We were created in 2006 with the support of the European Energy Intelligent Europe. We have 21 associated entities among collective and individual entities. We represent 3 municipalities from the south of Lisbon. So we are around 24 kilometers south from Lisbon. Our territory is almost 900 square kilometers, and the number of inhabitants, this is 2018 data, is 234,000 inhabitants. Our region is quite diverse. So we share, the 3 municipalities share a natural park called Arrábida. We have 2 municipalities at the coastal area. Setúbal has also a very important seaport. And then one of our municipalities is inland and has the Volkswagen factory located there, Palmela. We have tourism, agriculture, winery, cheese, etc. So it's a very diverse territory in geographical and economical terms. Our main areas of work are climate change mitigation. So our 3 municipalities participate in the Covenant of Mayors, 2 of them in the Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Palmela is finishing the participation this year, finishing the report on the Sustainable Energy Action Plan. We work also with municipalities in the insertion, in the input of climate, energy, and environment in urban planning. We work also in mobility, accessibility, and transports. We have two entities, railroad and road entities as our associative members. We work with networks, with partnerships in our region and at European level. We work in energy efficiency, so we have experts in our team, experts in energy auditing and certification of buildings, ISO 50001, 60001 and 2 implementation and training. We work a lot in awareness raising. We have campaigns dedicated to schools, to general public, citizens, to municipalities. We develop also training sessions targeting our associated members, enterprises, and also local authorities. And one of our important fields of action is to bring to our territory investment. And for that, we search for financing programs. We develop projects for our associate members and also for ENA, so that we can bring new ideas, new solutions to our territory. In the scope of our participation in European projects, we are participating in ENANET MOB. This is an InterregMed project, and it has to do with mobility, electrical mobility in the Mediterranean region. This project gathers 16 partners from 12 countries, and it has a budget almost 6 million euros, and considers 3 different phases: testing, pilot implementation, and a capitalization phase. So the idea and the objective of this project is to bring into the Med region solutions and innovative solutions in the scope of electrical mobility. This project is a 4-year project, and it will end in 2022. So among our partners, we have people from Spain, Portugal, France, Cyprus, Greece, also a partner from Austria. Okay, they're a little bit outside of the InterregMed region, but they are an important partner, and okay, they are sharing with us some innovative solutions and examples. So the main objective, besides the implementation and development of sustainable electromobility plans, is also to create an interregional electrical mobility network and to develop an ICT platform referring to the charging points network. In this project, we are developing three different types of pilot projects. So the first pilot project has to do with linking islands and urban areas in the scope of electrical mobility, and it is expected, or they are being installed, charging stations and being bought electrical vehicles. The second pilot, the scope is measures for sharing electromobility. So we are talking about sharing electrical cars, carpooling, e-bikes, and also sharing of bicycles. Also in the scope of this pilot project, partners are supposed to buy electrical vehicles and to install charging stations. And the last one, it's the last mile freight transport connections. It's the one that we are developing in our territory. We are not studying the last mile freight transport, but we are studying solutions of electrical mobility in the scope of services, urban services, and urban authorities. In the scope of ICT platform, this platform is being developed by the scientific partners of our project, and the idea of this platform is to complement existing platforms at national level. It is our case. A little bit later on, I will talk about this. And for the countries that still do not have this kind of platforms, is to test the functioning and to gathering all the charging stations in the charging network, and then being managed by this platform. So In this project, we studied what is going on at European level and then at the regional level in each one of the countries participating. First of all, we analyzed, all the partners analyzed the regulations and directives in Europe that are related with electrical mobility. Also, sustainable urban mobility plans, what's going on in Europe, and air quality legislation. Then we had a second phase of this project that was related what's going on in each one of the countries. The implementation of the European legislation and also the development of each country's own legislation. So we gathered all these studies and all these analyses. We gathered in one study that is related with electric mobility in the EU. So what is necessary and what is going on in the development of electric mobility in the EU, and what kind of legislation and legal diplomas do we have to consider in this matter. So we analyzed grants for purchasing, what's going on in each one of the countries, what kind of grants exist, if they exist also, and what kind of measures does each one of the countries consider for motivating people to adopt electrical mobility solutions. I think this table is a little bit similar to the one Barbara showed. So we can see here more or less the position of each one of the countries, referring to the number of electrical vehicle chargers and the number of electrical mobility, electrical vehicles per 100,000 inhabitants. I should say that in Portugal, according to the numbers of 2018, we have 15 electrical vehicles per charging station. So I think it's quite an interesting number. Considering our national framework. So I should explain that in Portugal, in 2008 or 2009, there was an European project that financed the creation of the creation of a network, of an entity called MOBI-E. So it began by installing several charging points throughout the country. In our region, one of our municipalities was involved in this project, is Setúbal. So according to this project, several charging points were installed, and then it was created a platform, so a managing system of all these charging points. So this MOBI-E, after the end of the project, became a company. It was created a company involving private entities and the Portuguese state. So at this moment, the Portuguese state is participating in MOBI-E. Since last year, MOBI-E stopped installing charging stations. So we have at this moment 1,117 charging points. And now MOBI-E is only dedicated to manage this network. At this moment, there are several private entities that install the charging points, but all these new charging points have to be connected or have to be inserted in this network to be managed by MOBI-E. And so for us, ENA, participating in the ENANet MOB project, referring to the ICT platform that is being developed, we have to see in which way we can connect this ICT platform from ENANet MOB to the management network management system that MOBI-E is ruling and is coordinating. I should say that we created a group because we are developing in ENANet MOB an electrical mobility plan for our region, the region of Arrábida. And for this purpose, we created a group involving the 3 municipalities, the biggest energy utility in Portugal that is called EDP, and also the team of MOBI-E. so that we can, in the scope of this project, all the solutions and all the proposed paths will be practical and in reality will be connected with what exists presently. In Portugal, we have purchase subsidies. So as you can see here, for battery electrical vehicles, the state gives 3,000 euros for the purchase of each vehicle, and for the companies it's 2,250. We also have tax benefits, tax reduction, local incentives. For example, in our municipalities, there is free parking for electrical cars. There are, for example, energy utilities like EDP, like GALP. They give offers, discounts for the houses, for electricity used in houses that also use or charge the batteries of the electrical vehicles. And we also have tax benefits. At this moment, so this is data from 2018. In 2018, there were bought around 8,000 vehicles. So in total, from 2011 to 2018, there were bought 16,710 electrical vehicles. I should say that there were some state incentives in 2010 or from 2009, but these state incentives were withdrawn in 2012. So there was, we noticed a very important decrease in the purchase of electrical vehicles. But then when the incentives were again introduced in 2015, there was a huge raise in the purchase, as you can see. So there was a growth like 260% in 2015, and in 2018 there was a record in annual sales of electrical vehicles. So I can say that in Portugal, I think people are more and more being aware and buying this kind of vehicles. Okay, they are not very cheap. We still have the problem of batteries, charging batteries, of autonomy. So we know that nowadays there are some models, some brands like Volkswagen, like Toyota, Tesla, that have they've innovated a little bit more in the batteries and okay, the time, the number of kilometers that we can use the battery with one charge. But nevertheless, I think this remains an issue for the people who buy or have to choose between, a fossil fuel vehicle and an electrical vehicle. Also, the facility, the access to the charging points might be an issue for people who want to purchase this kind of vehicle. This is a benchmark, a comparison. Sorry. So this is a comparison of between each one of the countries participating in EnerNetMob. So here we can see in Portugal, we have funding to install charging, tax relief, indirect measures. And okay, at this moment we have 113 cities participating in the Covenant of Mayors. And okay, overall the cities, the municipalities are very aware of the importance of electrical mobility, and yes, are trying to motivate, besides themselves, to motivate citizens to choose this kind of solutions. In our territory, so we represent 3 municipalities, Setúbal, Palmela, and Sesimbra. This is our situation, referring to electrical vehicle charging points, charging stations. Only one of our municipalities has a sustainable urban mobility plan. And so this electrical mobility plan that we are developing for our region in the scope of EnerNetMob is very important. In one way, because for Setúbal, it will be an upgrade of their sump. In another way, for the other two municipalities, this is a reason for starting to develop a sump and starting to structure and to better plan this the electrical mobility in the territory. Also, as I said before, we have 3 municipalities in the Covenant of Mayors. One of them, Palmela, is already finishing the report because it started participating in 2009 in the first Covenant of Mayors. Setúbal and Sesimbra are already participating in the Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and Setúbal is implementing its SECAP. In the scope of EnerNetMob, what is ENA doing as a partner? So we are developing this electrical mobility plan for the Rábida territory. We are implementing this number 3 pilot project. We already bought an electrical van. We already bought 8 electrical cargo bicycles that we distributed through our municipalities and one of our associated members. And also we are developing and implementing communication and awareness raising campaigns. We are contributing to the Smart Cities community, organizing workshops, events. And I should say that we were preparing in the beginning of this year a big conference on electrical mobility to be implemented in May. Unfortunately, due to this pandemic situation, we were not able to implement it. So we postponed it, and hopefully we will implement it next year in October. So let's see if it is possible to implement it. You are already invited for it, and so we will tell you about it in the near future. There were some issues we found in the implementation of our pilot project and our electromobility plan, namely with a lack of regulation referring to the land use and to taxes. So we realized that although Portugal is very keen with this thematic of electrical mobility, there are important steps to be taken, mainly in the area of legislation and also in the area of local rules. And okay, I already told you about our conference and about our project, pilot project. And that's it. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, I will be available to answer it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, for your presentation on the EnerNetMob project and what you are doing. We are going to have later possibility of further discussing it during the question and answer and roundtable. So I kindly ask those of you that have not already done it to answer to Mentimeter to the question according to your experience, which are the main barriers to the introduction of electric vehicle in the public administration? Since this is the topic of next presentation from my colleague Laura Chessa, who she has been working previous than in Residence Park in the University of Sassari, where she had also a PhD on social rural development. And she has been working as a project manager here in Residence Park for a year. And she is the project manager of the NOMIX project from the Horizon 2020 project, that whose objective is to introduce electric vehicle in the public administration. As we can see for the feedback that we get, the main barriers for public administration seems to be budget constraints, with also some lack of charging infrastructure and difficulty in comparing cost whereas resistance to innovation and insufficient autonomy of electric vehicles, according to our audience, seems not to be the main problem. So Laura, tell us about the Noemix project and what's also the experience that you had in the frame of the project, which are the main barriers to the introduction of electric vehicles in public administration. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Fabio. Good morning, everyone. Are you seeing my presentation, I think? Yes, I will talk about the project Noemix, which aims to introduce electric car sharing for the public administration in the Friuli Venezia Giulia region in Italy. And before starting my presentation, I would like to show you a short video introduction. Okay, so as you have seen, the Noemix project was funded by the program Horizon 2020. It started in 2017 and it will end in May 2022. The Noemix partnership is composed by 6 institutions. The lead institution is the region Friuli Venezia Giulia. The project coordinator is Area Science Park. Then we have 2 technical partners, University of Trieste and BIT SPA, our financial expert. Our mobility expert is the National Association of Car Leasing and Mobility Service Companies in Italy, ANIASA. And for the communication aspects, we have as expert Promo Science. Noemix project has 2 main objectives, which are to promote a centralized, innovative fleet management model of regional public authorities, shifting from a vehicle ownership model to a centralized mobility as a service scheme managed by private operators. And then also to foster the transition to electric vehicles and the progressive replacement of vehicles that use fossil fuels. Noemix is following an holistic approach, promoting internal car sharing inside the public administrations, substitute all the internal combustion engine vehicles with electric vehicles, also optimizing the fleet management efficiency, promote an e-car friendly attitude among public employees, promoting also an efficient use of charging infrastructure through a smart management system, and producing renewable energy for the vehicle recharging by building a big photovoltaic plant instead of multiple photovoltaic plants in order to reduce installation costs. The Noemix work plan foresees several steps. The first one has been the creation of a public administration panel, grouping all the public administrations that decided to join the project and that will benefit from the NOEMIX service. Then, a second step is foreseen a technical feasibility study for the identification of the charging points and also of the linked technology of the charging systems. Then the drafting of the tender documentation for the service supply, the publication of the tender notice, the launch of the service, of course, and the replication of the NOEMIX experience across Europe. Where we are now, we established the regional public authorities panel. We also analyzed the mobility needs of public authorities, and we finished the identification of the charging point sites and also of the linked technologies. And we are now drafting all the tender documents for the launching of the tender that will be done next year. Meanwhile, we are conducting several communication and replication activities. According to the survey conducted by the University of Trieste, the public authorities use old vehicles with more than 10 and also 15 years. And also these vehicles are mostly underused, traveling less than 100 kilometers per day. Furthermore, the analysis revealed that there are other management issues, as the lack of a management software for the fleet management. Only few bodies monitor mileage and no one take track of the time of use. And also very few have internal car sharing systems, and most of the cars are assigned to a single person or small teams. The public authorities panel composition is composed by 18 institutions, among which regional institutions, health institutions, the 4 main cities of the region, 2 transport entities, and 3 research institutions. And the service, the NOEMIX service, foresees more than the provision of more than 570 electric vehicles, the provision of a platform for the fleet management, the installation of more than 200 charging points dedicated to public authorities, and also the installation of 100 public charging points, and the installation of a photovoltaic plant for the recharging of the electric vehicles. The project NOEMIX received more than 900,000 euros from the European Commission and will mobilize more than 23 million euros, reaching so a remarkable investment impact. Of course, as all the projects, let me say, we encountered several obstacles during the project implementation. First of all, the lack of complete data on usual fleet management will not permit us a fleet rationalization. It means that we will not be able to reduce the total number of vehicles, and each old vehicle will be substituted with an electric vehicle. Then another problem is the general reticence of public administration officers on the novelty promoted by the project. It requires several meetings and also trainings with them to increase their trust on the electric vehicles and the whole service. And also from the market side, we found that private operators are not ready to offer a whole electric mobility service, so including both electric vehicles and charging infrastructures. And they are also often reticent to make agreements among them to bid for a unique tender. So we are organizing several meetings with them to talk about this problem. And of course, as for all the activities, all the projects, the pandemic is slowing down all the project activities. For more information, you can see our project website, but also the video tutorials which have been created. There are 3 videos. One is on the introduction of electric vehicle. The second is on how to charge an electric vehicle, and the third one is how to drive an electric vehicle. These are in Italian, but are going to be translated in English very soon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laura, very much for your presentation. Yeah, I will say that compared to the answer from the audience to our questions, the autonomy of the vehicles is not for most of public administration problems, since they are doing usually short-range movement with a budget. Some resistance to innovation, at least in our experience, was a major barrier. So I think we could move to the next speaker, Mr. Professor Vedran Krincic, that works at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Rijeka in Croatia. Is currently an assistant professor at the Department of Electrical Power Engineering and the head of the Department of General Electrical Engineering. His current scientific and professional interest, in addition to the field of sustainable mobility, with an emphasis on electric mobility, included the application of technologies and solutions for smart grids, SEAP and SECAPs. The result of the activity was the publication of a number of scientific and professional papers, as well as to dissemination activities directed to the general public. And today, what are you going to present us, Professor Krincic?
Okay, hello to everyone, and thank you for the introduction. Today I'm going to talk about our experience here in Croatia, in Primorje Gorski Kotar County, with a special focus on the island of Krk, which is branded as a smart island. And we have done a couple of projects during the last almost 10 years in order to become sustainable, and part of which is also mobility. Just let me know if everything is okay with my screen sharing. Do you see my screen?
Everything fine.
Okay, so I may proceed.
Please.
Fine, thanks. So here we are at Primorje Gorski Kotar County. The important is to mention that we are quite motorized. You see that this number, it's above the national and EU average, and therefore there is a great potential for also for implementation of electromobility. During this last couple of years, we participate in projects EnerMob and EnerNetMob, which were already mentioned, so I won't take time by explaining these projects. Let's just say that there are pilot actions, charging stations being built, cars rented or purchased, and they will be results disseminated in public. These are 6 charging stations in total from these projects. And when talking about our county in general, we have more about 60 stations at the moment, and around 170 vehicles. And when comparing to the rest of Croatia, actually we are quite good. As expected, the most interest there is in categories L1, L7 and M1, which are personal vehicles. And also let's just mention the fund which supports for last 6 years the purchase of vehicles with almost 15 million euros. Here, as I said, when comparing to the rest of Croatia, we have around 6% of area and population, but when we talk about charging infrastructure, almost 20% of number of sockets and locations are here in Croatia in Primorje-Gorski Kotar County, which is actually quite good starting position to build on this electromobility roadmap. Also, it was mentioned for several times during this webinar about the ratio of number of vehicles that gravitate towards one charging station. Here in Primorje-Gorski Kotar County, we have around three vehicles to charging stations, so it's quite good. But also now we have to work on building the number of vehicles, so as we already have a quite good infrastructure. And here we did during the development of strategic documentation, we did develop a couple of scenarios in order to be in line with national projections. So there is a plan in the next decade to further expand the network of charging stations in order to support the trend of electromobility and to become a county which is well known and electromobility friendly. Now I'm going to talk about the island of Krk, which is actually one of the pilot projects and pioneering islands. It's well known even in European level for its projects. As we can see, it's around 500 kilometers from big European capitals, so there is a great tourist potential, and actually around 5% of Croatian tourism is on the island of Krk, with less than 20,000 local inhabitants, but during the summer season, over 100,000 people. And I'll say that one of the biggest Croatian islands, connected with bridge to mainland, so it also has an airport, so it's quite good for these pilot projects. The island set quite ambitious goals to become energy sustainable by 2030, and this would be done in a couple of phases. First, by energy savings, by just raising public awareness, then promoting soft measures, investments in buildings, building electromobility infrastructure, and also the rest of the energy is planned to be fulfilled by building renewable energy sources. In first place, solar power plants, but also wind power plant is planned in the island. And part of this energy strategy, of course, electromobility has important role. So what was done during the last years? 12 charging stations initially were built. All of them were actually funded by the National Fund, and also a fleet of electric vehicles was bought, which was given to municipal leaders, to the mayors. As in the island of Krk, there are seven municipalities. This was done in order to promote the electromobility, of course, on the island, and these charging stations are also open for public. This is the map of charging stations, and as you can see in this area, in each municipality there is at least one charging station, so the whole island is covered, and there is no range anxiety because this is quite from the bridge till the final points, it's less than 50 kilometers, so quite good density. And when we talk about the number of sessions, here we can see from 2017 to 2020 that there is a rise of requests, but also I have to mention that here are 2 charging stations in Dobrin, and one of which was not working. Therefore, there is a fall. And in total, of course, 2020 was not so good due to the pandemic situation. So the summer was not so as expected, but still good. Also, one interesting project which was done in the island is the conversion of classic vehicle to the electric vehicle in order to establish a conversion team and to show to the locals that actually electromobility can also bring the benefits for them, not just as consumers, but also as generators of new value. And here, during the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for the island, we did analysis in which we showed that actually the sector of electromobility has to be developed in parallel with the renewable energy sources, as of course the most beneficial would be to have the whole fleet charged by energy obtained by renewables. And of course we cannot expect that this would be this would happen overnight, but period of couple of years would be needed. And of course not all the categories are equally potential, but when we talk about the most interesting is definitely M1 with small passenger vehicles, and renewables also, when we talk about them, solar power plants on the roofs of the owners of the vehicles or in vicinity, so that the energy produced would be actually spent on the same place without any losses in distribution and transmission grid. Here we also did a mathematical model of the island, because it's actually quite important to, in parallel to developing the electromobility, to consider it as a part of a wider system, of course, which has to exchange both energy and information with electricity network. And today we talk about smart grids, about systems which are resilient, which can prevent some events and heal themselves in order to sustain this electrification of transport. Also, during these projects with our partners, we developed mobile applications in order to promote alternatives ways of mobility. So there is a Kirk Bike mobile app, as there are more than 600 kilometers of routes on the islands. And also after this, another Kirk Hike was developed application to promote hiking and strolling. We have here a layer of mobile charging stations, and now we also plan to extend it with a layer of bike sharing system, because there was bike sharing system built in the island with 8 locations, and each of them has 10 electric bicycles. And this was also funded by the Ministry of Tourism. So what I want to emphasize here, that's quite important to have a strategic documents, and then just be prepared when some funding opportunities arrive, in order to build the equipment and establish the systems. This is, as far as I see it, recommended methodology on the example of the island. So to create long-term vision with documents, strategic documents, then in parallel to development of network or charging stations requirement, which is required in order to enable people even to think about the mobility, because if we don't have a publicly available network, then people won't be convinced that it's good to buy a vehicle with a couple of hundred of kilometers range, although this is quite enough for them. And then in parallel to develop network of I would say workshops in order to support this electromobility trend, because people are also thinking about potential years and problems that would arrive, and also to have continuous educational activities to promote, to educate, and even on a level of high school and elementary school, but also on a level of decision makers, as we have seen during these previous presentations, that there is a need to promote and to educate the decision makers in order to accept the technology that has definitely great potential for all of us. We are witnessing historic moments, I would say. We probably all know that in September 2020, the electric vehicles overtook sales of diesels in Europe, and similar situation was in 2013 when it was the beginning of the end, I like to say, of the fossil fuels, because the new capacity in renewables overtook the new capacity built in fossil fuel technologies. So I believe that there is a place for all of us on each different level to get involved into this new era, and I hope that we will all in this and similar events gain even more knowledge about the future that is already here. Okay, thank you. And should you have any questions, please contact me via email or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Vedran, for your presentation. It was very interesting what you are doing in the Heidelberg. I ask the audience to answer to the next question on Mentimeter, which is where you would primarily locate charging station. And with this question, we are opening the roundtable and discussion so that we can answer the questions that have been raised by the audience. So let's see which are the answer to the question. Okay, so okay, a few has answered. So, Vedran, what would you say? What would you comment about this point of where to locate inside a city the charging station?
Okay.
Getting feedback from the audience. What's your point of view on that?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, this is actually expected. It should be located where we have the most need, and this is where people spend their time and let the vehicles charge. So of course we have to consider the fact that almost 95% of time the vehicles are not moving. So in this sense, there is a great opportunity in many locations to charge, and I believe that in years to come there is this market would expand, and also providers of services not related to mobility would have interest in providing the charging service in order to attract vehicle owners to their restaurants or other similar, for instance, places. So, but also it should be mentioned that we should take into account the private charging locations, where people, I believe, would mostly charge during night, because it's necessary to take into consideration the burden of the electricity grid. And we have lower consumption during night, so it's quite logical actually that vehicles are charged when there is no such consumption of everyday life.
Yeah, thank you. Any other of the panelists that wish to add something on this?
Yes, I would add that at present there's a lot of energy at night, but if we move towards renewable energy sources, the peak period will be during the day. So in city centers, in multimodal hubs, and at workplaces, in the future, I think will be some interesting and most appropriate locations in order to store, even in a vehicle to grid perspective, to store the amount of energy which cannot be consumed when there's the peak of production.
Thank you, Marco. Is any other panelists that wish to add something? Okay, so we could move back to one question from the audience, which was very interesting, which is in the future there could be perhaps some competition between electric vehicles and hydrogen fueled vehicles. And personally think that this could be particularly the case for buses and larger vehicles. So what do you think? Is any of the panelists that wish to comment? For example, Barbara? Microphone, Barbara.
Sorry, I think as you were saying that hydrogen will be an opportunity for heavy vehicles, for trucks, for buses in the future. And I think that hydrogen will be not only a competitive technology, but I think there will be a sort of integration of technologies. I think that it will depend on which technology will fit better for a cluster of vehicles, and of course what the costs will be for every technologies referred to the vehicles cluster.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. Is any other speaker that wish to comment or has some experience to share?
I was just would like to tell, okay, we are not experts in the hydrogen issue, no, neither the electromobility, we are start working on it. But in Portugal now, and the state is trying to motivate a lot the creation of an hydrogen cluster. Here close to us in the port of Sines, I think it will be created, they say one of the biggest or in Europe, center for fuel for the production and distribution of hydrogen. So we are quite curious to see what will happen and how this will cope with these initiatives referring, electrical mobility, etc. So they want to make it a big project, and we are in expectation about it.
Thank you. Professor Skrincic?
Okay, I'd like to add as well, in Croatia, and at the moment there are no many stations for charging hydrogen vehicles, but the Croatian national oil and gas company INA also has quite ambitious plans in, first of all, producing the green hydrogen, and also to participate in projects of public transport in big Croatian cities with these hydrogen powered vehicles. So I believe that this is all good, because this is also alternative mobility with alternative source, and that these technologies should be compatible and go along hand in hand, let's say, one to another. So it's quite good that also in other sectors are developing.
Yeah, thank you very much for your contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we could move further. I would ask our audience to answer to an open question, which is, how do you see the future of charging infrastructure, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, of course? In the meantime that we get the feedback from the audience, there was a question regarding which are the most effective incentives to promote electric mobility in cities. So I was wondering if any of the panelists has some idea or share their own experience on that.
So Fabio, you were talking about the question about the municipalities, the incentives for electrical mobility.
Yes, the question was from Christos Trodes, which on which are the most effective incentives to promote electromobility in cities, which I suppose could be either financial, but also in terms of free parking or something like that.
Yes, I was going to talk a little bit about our experience here in Portugal. We think that is okay. Financing incentives to buy the vehicles and or to change. You know, if someone wants to buy a new vehicle and has another one moved by fossil fuel, so to motivate the exchange, and also yes, free parking. So there are several incentives at the city level, like for parking, that they are quite important also, and to become easier to move and to use these kind of vehicles in cities. Although I think the main idea is not so much to use the individual vehicle, yes, but then to use also public transport. But yes, if we have to use the individual vehicle, to use electrical one, and Portuguese municipalities are using a lot this kind of incentives, free parking, access to specific areas only for electrical vehicles, and incentives to the purchase of the vehicles.
Thank you for sharing your ideas. As anyone other of the panelists that wish to add something on that?
Okay, so yes, there is a whole range of the possible incentives, either financial or some benefits such as parking, dedicated lanes, or any other signs of recognition that would help EV drivers, even maybe to organize courses for them to learn how to drive the vehicle to be more efficient. This is also quite interesting because there, for instance, in Croatia, there is an NGO established that gathers EV drivers, and now the idea is to stand as a body that communicates with the local governments, with both on national level, to foster this relationship and to help the decision makers when thinking about the policies and when thinking about development of charging infrastructure. So I believe that the communication is crucial, and also, as I already said, the education of on different levels of all the stakeholders involved. Even from this communication, there would be new ideas with which it could be worked on, and new incentives could be maybe think of and developed.
Yeah. Thank you. So we are getting some feedback from the audience on our question. One point is related to the business model and also to public-private partnership related to charging infrastructure. So we'll wish to comment on this. Perhaps Marco, you want to say something on this point?
Yes, sorry. Is there a question in the chat or?
Yeah, well, getting a look at the answer that we got from Mentimeters, there's one comment which says that charging infrastructure for electric vehicle is easy for big and rich cities where there's a strong private initiatives, whereas could be difficult for smaller territories with less financial capacity. So this is a good point of interest that perhaps could be even wider, since there has been a sort of rush for some companies to, let's say, colonize the most interesting areas for charging infrastructure. So perhaps you can share some ideas.
Yeah, I believe that charging infrastructure could be, the network could be created in a public partnership with a public-private partnership model. Of course, it's easier in bigger cities where the demand is high. The demand actually, it's not very high at present, maybe. So yeah, it's always a problem whether you need an efficient and widely spread charging network infrastructure before, or you need a critical mass, a number of electric vehicles in order to incentive private companies to create and to expand the grid. In the NOEMIX project, we were thinking about this because our region is small and there are 4 main cities, but that are not so big. So it could be attractive for private companies to set up charging infrastructures near highways or on the main road network and in the main city centers. It's not so easy and it's not so attractive for them to develop the network in less in areas with lower demand. So maybe support from the public could incentivize them, or another options could be well, I noticed that from our speeches that the lack of planning is rather common in all our countries, and I would like the other panelists to talk about this, because in Italy there's a national level planning and then we have a regional level, but in many cases each region plan without talking to the neighbors. But the northern regions, Veneto, Lombardia, Emilia-Romagna, Piedmont, set up a work group to work together and to plan an integrated network and at a level higher than the regional level. And another problem is interoperability. So public accessible charging infrastructures, maybe it's not easy to pay if you want to charge while you are traveling. luckily, standards for connectors and sockets are set, so that's not a problem. But accessibility in terms of payment is a problem especially at the international, at the European level. And then in Italy, there's another problem that the national regulations foreseen the creation of a national platform to map all the publicly of the infrastructures which are accessible to everyone, both private and public. So private open to everyone, but it was never created. So people lack the information, and this increase range anxiety. So I would like to ask the other panelists whether how's the situation in their countries, and what's the weakest level of planning. Is planning at all levels, so national, regional, municipal level? Does municipalities have municipality developed some electric mobility planning? And so, yeah, to go back to the first question, so another way to promote the spread of infrastructures on the whole territory is having planning. So maybe when institutions give permission to private companies, they could permit them to build a charging infrastructure in a more high demand area, but if they realize another infrastructure in an area at market failure, maybe. So this could be an incentive to create infrastructures in less favorable areas.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Vedran is willing to answer to at least some of the many points you raised.
Yes, actually, I totally agree with Marco. In Croatia, there are similar issues. The non-consistency in the lack of communication between different levels, and where, for instance, in some areas where the electromobility is already being developed, we are trying to somehow to read from the national level. But still some documents are outdated, and we are waiting for new for them to be updated, so we could plan on the lower level the development of the infrastructure. When we talk about the roaming, the issue of roaming, what Marco mentioned, it's similar in Croatia, as there are a couple of operators of the charging stations, and then of course they are all trying to be as open as possible. And actually on the European level, there is a NextE project, you're probably familiar with it, where there is a network of 250 stations. I'm just gonna paste the link with the post about it on LinkedIn. And in this project, actually, the idea is to connect all the stations to be able to provide to the electric vehicle driver the unique identifying entrance into the system, and also the Croatian national operator, this is Croatian Power Utility HEP, with its network is planning to enter the system. And in Croatia, it has more than 200 stations, so it would be a part of wider network which covers six countries. So similar situation as Marco mentioned this in Croatia. I believe that the other partners also have similar stories to share.
Thank you. So if no other questions, yeah, Christina, you want
sorry, I just wanted to say to add to what my colleagues said. In Portugal is more or less similar. So in Portugal we have this entity called MobiE, and that in 2009 had this European project that installed the charging points throughout the whole country. Okay, not all the municipalities. For example, in our region, only one of our municipalities, Stuvan, participated in this project. But the idea was to create this network of charging points. And so we have this national entity participated by the state, so it's a company. And this company manages the network of charging points. What we have right now is lots of different small private entities contacting our municipalities in order to install the charging points that will be connected to this grid. But what happens, or what we see, because in the scope of ENENET-MOV, I think I forgot to tell you in my presentation, we will also buy and install 3 fast charging points, 1 in each of our municipalities. And what we feel is that there is a lack of knowledge about the rules to implement, for example, for using the place. So the place, it's a public space, so it belongs to the municipality. And even the municipality, I think they don't know yet how to deal with this charging companies and things like that. So we are still, nationally there is a knowledge, but if we go down to the municipalities, some bigger ones, I think they know already and know how to do it, but the smaller ones, they are trying to learn with the other ones. So there is still a lack of information and how to put functioning this network and the charging points and the legal aspects, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so before closing, if no further question from the public arise, I have a further question to our panelists, which is to sum up, many of you mentioned the potential of vehicle to grid as a way to save energy, to store energy, and improve the efficiency of the network. I would say, which are currently the main barriers for its practical implementation, since currently it's more something theoretical than something practical. So we want to give a brief comment on that. Barbara, Monaco, or Marco, want to say?
Okay, let's say that I think that the main opportunity will be that of balancing the grid, and so to contribute to a local clean environment and a better energy balance, globally energy balance. But as we know, there are many technical barriers and also many regulation barriers. For example, from the point of view of the technical barriers, so we can relate to the increase in sophisticated infrastructure, or a significant exchange of information, which means a more complicated infrastructure, and many extra safety protection and consequently higher system costs. I think that these will be the main challenges to the broad diffusion of vehicle to grid in the next years. Because in this moment, I think, for example, in our country, that the grid and the regulation system is not already ready for this.
Thank you. Any other of the panelists wish to add something to this point? Okay, so I think that now we can close the webinar. Just to sum up, I would say that my personal understanding at that point of charging infrastructure has some similarities with what we have seen, for example, in our electric vehicles in relation to the introduction of renewable energy, which at the beginning required a lot of public incentives and also required a work of dissemination and helping people understanding that investing when refurbishing a house in renewable energy, energy efficiency, put higher costs that could be later recovered during the years, as it is the case of electric vehicles, since you make larger investment at the beginning where you purchase the vehicles, and later you save with the price of the fuel. On the other side, also in relation to the network, to the development of the network, as we have discussed, this is something with what happened with the mobile network, where in the big areas of higher interest, private investors invested directly, and there was no real need for a public intervention, which was required to bring the network in the most remote areas where the market was not interested in investing. Finally, I would like to stress the point that when we are speaking about electric vehicles, that's not just cars. For example, bikes, light electric vehicles like bikes are extremely important and can have an extremely relevant benefit for cities. We have seen also in our past webinars where the introduction of e-bikes make it accessible for people that are not particularly fit or in areas which are not flat, and using a bike could be a challenge. So this is a high potential. In our database of solutions, there are several solutions linked to this point that could be replicated. And so if you are interested in that, take the opportunity of our call for the replicators, which I presented at the beginning. So I thank all of you for your participation to the webinar, particularly thanks to our panelists that shared their experience with us. It was very interesting to listen to them, and you will get all the slides that were presented by email. So thank you again. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.